Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories, where we play tales to take you away from today. On the podcast this time, we have a new segment with our very own Sylvia Shults.
She is truly awesome.
For once, British guy, I agree with you.
Thank you.
Sylvia's topic this time is friendly or helpful ghosts. We will hear a heartwarming tale about a sister's loss and a ghostly beach visit. Also, Ron reads the classic science fiction story, The Test Rocket.
Oh, that is a good one.
British guy, you're on a roll. So, are you ready for this 5-minute mystery?
Absolutely.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Serenus Canaria domestica, that little bird that is bred in captivity for humans to enjoy their songs. These birds are friendly, happy little fellas that only want to please us.
Police headquarters, Inspector Hoskin speaking.
Police.
Yeah? Yeah, what is it?
Sam Blake speaking, 37 Hudson Way. Come quick, my wife is dead. Gas.
Dead? How long?
I don't know. Just got home.
37 Hudson Way. Okay, be right out. And in the meantime, you better throw open those windows and doors. Hey, Mike, grab your chapeau. We got some calling to do. Mr. Blake?
Yes, Inspector. Come right in.
Thanks. Oh, Mr. Blake, my assistant, Mike Kusky.
Howdy.
Where's the body? You haven't moved her?
No, sir. She's here in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
Right where I found her.
Of course. Well, Mike and I will just have a look.
And there she is, Inspector. Dead as a doornail.
Gassed, all right. You can still smell a little.
It looks like most of the gas came from the oven. The door's still a little open. What's that?
My simple powers of deduction would say it's a bird.
Oh, there it is, a canary. A bird cage in the kitchen, huh?
Yeah, but right now we better get back to Mr. Blake. Now, Mr. Blake, if you don't mind, there are just a few routine questions. I'd like to know exactly what happened.
Well, sir, I just come home from the game tonight. I'm quite a fan, but my wife didn't care much for sports, so I usually went alone. As I was saying, the game was over about 10:20, I should say.
And you came right home?
Yes, sir. I drove and made it home about 11. I thought I smelled something when I tried the door, and the minute it was open, it hit me in the face. Gas all over the place. I rushed in, calling to Jane, and when I went to turn off the jets, I found her there on the floor, dead.
I see.
Of course, I knew she was gone when I found her. First thing I could think of was to call the police.
Your wife has obviously been dead since about 10. Mr. Blake, if you don't mind my asking, just what happened in the last few seconds of play at the game?
Why, Zakowitz fumbled, and Carlton recovered for an 80-yard touchdown run. Well, look here, Inspector. What are you driving at?
Just that in case this shouldn't be suicide, I wanted to know if you could back up your alibi.
Not suicide. What are you driving at, boss?
Yes, Inspector. What are you driving at?
Just this, Mr. Blake. I arrest you for the murder of your wife.
What did Mr. Blake overlook? Do you know the clue? In a moment, we'll hear firsthand from the inspector. But first...
Wife found dead in kitchen under suspicious circumstances. I'm sure that's what the newspapers will read. What we have here is a really nice FFM that has a cut-and-dried solution. Did you catch a whiff of it, or did the cat get your canary? Let's head back and find out more.
And now let's see if your powers of deduction are the same as the inspector's.
You can't arrest me. I was at the game till 10:20. I proved it. And you said yourself my wife died 20 minutes before.
I haven't forgotten the powers of radio, Mr. Blake, but there are a few things you did forget. First of all, if you wanted to kill your wife and then make it look like she was overcome by gas, it might have helped if you'd turned on enough gas. Your wife was dead from another cause, the source of which will be found in an autopsy before the gas jet was even opened. The thing you forgot, Mr. Blake, is that canaries are quite as susceptible to gas as human beings. If there had been enough gas in that kitchen to kill a woman, a small bird certainly could not have survived. And your singing canary is still alive, Mr. Blake. Very much alive.
Well, what is good for the goose is also good for the gander. In this case, the gas should have killed both the bird and his wife. Pretty good story and a complete mystery. I have to say here and now that this one was brought to you by Canaries Worldwide.
What's that you say?
I want to say a big thank you to Kevin Starr of Kansas City. He sent in this email. Ron, I want to thank you for the show. I listen each week and can't wait to see what you have next. Amazing. I've also wanted to comment on the recent edition of ad content. I support you going out and supporting the show. Also, I visited Gladys Goodies and even bought the sampler bag. Thank you for everything you do and keep the stories coming. Kevin from Kansas City. Thank you, Kevin. That means a lot to receive an email like that, and I appreciate it. Not everyone is happy about the commercials. I received this email from Brian from Parts Unknown. Hello, Ron. I wanted to say I think it's too bad that you're selling out and wanting to commercialize your podcast. I'm not sure if I will continue to listen, but I'll wait to see how bad it gets. Some podcasts are having 2 or 3 ads per show, and there's no way to skip them. I just quit listening. Well, Brian, thank you for your comments. I thought long and hard about this subject, and what it comes down to is rising costs. Every service that I use wants a piece of the pie. But what do I do if I don't have a pie? That is why I'm doing this. I made a promise that I will keep the ads short and of good character. All I ask is that you listen and maybe check it out if the object of the commercial is of use to you. Speaking of ads, Gladys Goodies does have the sampler bags that Kevin spoke of on sale right now for $3. Go check it out and tell them that Ron's Amazing Stories sent you. Thank you, Gladys Goodies.
I'm Gladdy, the dachshund, the face of Gladys Goodies. Are you worried about your pet's health? My parents were too, especially since I developed pancreatitis. They couldn't find any treats I could eat, so they made some. Our natural treats are healthy for all dogs, with and without health issues. We have lots of delicious flavors like chicken, turkey, salmon, sweet potato, beef, and more. With our homemade treats, you won't worry about the contents because they have no chemicals, fillers, or bad ingredients. Go to GladysGoodies.com now to get your fur friend a bag and pick them up some swag while you're there. You'll be glad you did. Remember, we have the treats and swag to make their tails wag. Again, that's GladysGoodies.com. Again, that's GladysGoodies.com.
And now it's time for your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
This week we have a story within a story. I've told you many times that I receive emails from people to say that they have a tale to tell. Then, when I try to contact them, I never hear back. In some cases, they've asked me to write their stories, and after I've done that, I also never hear anything back. This story starts out like that. In 2017, I received an email from a person who identified themselves as Michael from California. I don't have the original email, but the gist of it was that they had a sad story and they wanted me to write it. Also, the person wanted to communicate through emails for reasons that will become clear later on. We went through the process, and when I thought I had enough information to write it up, I did so. When I finished, I sent the script to Michael and waited for his approval. It never came. I was disappointed, of course, but I moved on. Fast forward to January of 2019. I received this email. Hello, Ron. I have to apologize to you. 2 years ago, I sent you a story for your show. You were kind enough to write it and send it back to me. First off, I want you to know that you did a great job. So good, in fact, it made me cry, and I couldn't bring myself to do anything with it. A recent event this past summer made me realize that there is a happy ending to the tale. You have no reason to do this, and I won't fault you if you don't, but can we run the story with a new ending? Catherine Michaels, San Diego, California. Yes, Michael is a girl. Well, that explained why she wanted to do emails the first time around. I'm sure that you can guess that I took Catherine, up on her offer. She also sent me the new ending, written quite well, I might add, and I still had the original story that I had written. I put them together, sent it to her, and quickly got the response that I've been waiting for since March of 2017. Here is the story that Catherine and I have written together, titled My Brother and the Crate. As a 10-year-old, I loved going to the beach. My family was living in San Diego in 2009, where we would go to Mission Beach to play in the sun, body surf, and explore Belmont Park. We went so many times that we were pretty much left to do what we wanted and would meet back at a certain place and time. It is a wonderful place. Open beaches, warm waters, amazing attractions like SeaWorld, and of course, the swimming. You can almost do that year-round. Almost. One Saturday, the weather was not so good. We had planned the trip for some time, so even with the foul weather, we decided to go anyway. There is so much to do there that not going swimming would be okay. My brother, Paulie, was 9 years old. He and I would always stay together on these trips. We would play together, swim together, ride the attractions together. I think you get the idea. Of course, we didn't always get along, but somehow going to the beach changed all of that, and we couldn't even imagine arguing while there. We decided to head to the beach because cool things would wash up on shore due to the weather. Also, there would be fewer people trying to find them. We had found some shells, a starfish, even a brand new flashlight that day. Then, my brother spotted a crate of some sort floating just offshore. We wanted that pretty bad and tried everything we could think of to snag it. We were about to give up when my brother said, "Screw it." He took off his shoes and pants and started off into the water. One of our rules was to never enter the ocean when the tide is going out or the weather is bad. I tried to stop him, but he said it'd be fine, that it was only about 10 feet out. I grabbed his arm, but he angrily yanked it away. He went into the water and easily made it to the crate. I thought to join him, but decided to stay on shore. A huge wave came in and bashed my brother and the crate. When things cleared away, I saw the crate pop up even further out to sea, but no sign of my brother. I remember screaming, and then voices all around me. My brother was lost, and it would be 3 days before his body turned up. It was found by a local commercial tuna boat. After the funeral, and for many years, I could not go back to Mission Beach, or any beach for that matter. I never even went to the amusement park. Anything that reminded me of my brother and my failure, I avoided. I became extroverted, and in the end, needed help. At age 15, I tried to kill myself. The good news was that I didn't have a plan or even know how to do it. My friend Sam called the police and my parents. I finally got the help I needed and worked through my brother's death. I realized it was his decision to go in after the crate, and it was a bad one. Had I gone after him, I too probably would have been killed. One of the things that helped me through those times was to put my tale into words. Today, while I miss my brother, I know he's out there waiting for me. Someday we will play again on the beach and look for cool things. This is not the end of my story. While I had come to grips with my role in my brother's death, I still thought of him often. I wonder where he is and if he's happy. In the summer of 2018, I would have my answer. It was the 9th anniversary of his death, and I decided to go back to the beach where the tragedy happened. As if on cue, the weather was lousy and the crowds were small. I walked along the shore to about where the accident occurred. I couldn't be sure, of course, but I knew I was close. I looked out into the ocean and whispered out my brother's name. Polly. I'm not sure how, but I felt a connection with the sea at that very moment. Chills began to surge through my body, and I felt a peace unlike anything I have ever felt before. Tears began to run down my cheek, and I could see something standing there in the water about 10 feet off. It was a little boy holding a crate and smiling. Most everyone I tell this story say that that's what I wanted to see. To them, I always have the same response. You're probably right, but I don't care. It was real enough for me. Catherine Michaels, San Diego, California. Well, it took 2 years to tell your story, Catherine, but I am so appreciative that you did. Thank you. I think a lot of people that will hear this story will relate to it in some way. I also respect you for your courage to face the past and talk about it. What an amazing story. If you want to hear your story on the show, please go to ronsamazingstories.com, click on the Contact or Story Submission tab, and tell us all about it. I want, and we want, to hear what happened to you. And like Catherine, it may be cathartic for you to do it. Thank you, Catherine. We all love a good story, but what we truly crave is a ghost story. It's time now for Ghost Stories with Sylvia. Sylvia Shults is a librarian and author by day, but at night, she becomes a ghost hunter. Following a lifetime spent in the pursuit of the weird and the strange, her non-fiction works include Ghost of the Illinois River, Fractured Spirits, 44 Years in Darkness, Hunting Demons, and The Spirits of Christmas. We now cross over the veil and join Sylvia as she tells us more tales from the unknown. Well, Sylvia, we're back for round 2 And I got to tell you, man, the weather here has just been frightful. We're having temperatures sometimes getting down into the 20s here.
20s. That's tropical compared to what I'm experiencing right now.
I heard in your area you're getting down to 49 below with the wind chill.
Yes, I was very concerned about our little wild feral kitties outside, but they came through it just fine. The two brothers have ridiculously floofy coats, so they came through it just perfectly. The full moon and the lunar eclipse a few weeks ago, when I was out there watching it, very briefly for moments at a time, it was 2 very small degrees. So I did not stay out for very long at a time. So yeah, it was, I think this morning when I woke up, it was 8 degrees, and
Oh, wow.
I think it's 16 now. It got all the way up to 16 degrees today.
You know, what's interesting is I was watching some of your weather reports, from your local weather, not just yours, but Wisconsin and some other places. But, and they were sitting there saying things like, okay, make sure you wear protection around your eyes because your eyes could freeze.
Yes! Why do I live in a place where my eyeballs could freeze? Tell me why.
I don't know, Sylvia.
Somebody said if you go outside, make sure to wear a scarf to warm your breath, because when it's this cold, during the real cold snap we had, if you take as many as 13 breaths or as few as 13 breaths, just that cold air, it could damage your lungs.
Oh, my goodness.
Horrifying.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we had a high of 38 today, and it looks like we might go down to the mid-20s tonight.
Yeah, 38 degrees, I would be just like, heck with the coat. I don't need gloves. It's 38 degrees.
All right. So, well, I have something else for you here. You have your first bit of email to the show.
Ooh, lay it on me.
All right. Well, here it is. Hello, Ron, because it was written to me. I love the podcast and the new segment with Sylvia. Is it true she's a librarian and author by day and ghost hunter by night? Or is that just hype for the new segment? Also, isn't the ghost hunting world male-dominated? Deborah Patton from Boise, Idaho.
Well, Deborah, thank you so much for being my first email. I'm so excited. I do have to tell you that this is not hype in the least. I am legit a librarian by day and an author. I have worked at the Fond du Lac Library in East Peoria, Illinois for 21 and a half years. So I think I can call myself a librarian by now. And I do write books. We've talked about that before. And yes, I go ghost hunting at night. So no hype at all. That is absolutely true fact. About the field of the paranormal being male-dominated, it kind of is. I mean, all the shows that you see on TV have all these male hosts and everything, and, these big, fierce ghost hunters going into scary places, roar, you've got to be guys. But I do find that a lot of ghost hunters that I know personally are female, and we're very, very good at it because we are sensitive, we are aware of our surroundings, we're willing to go into places with an open mind, and we're trying to claim some of that field from the guys.
Well, and I think you told me once that you were in a theater and there was a particular ghost that took an attraction to you, and he was a male ghost. And I got the impression from that you had indicated that sometimes some of the ghosts are actually more drawn to women because they may be a male ghost that had passed.
Oh, definitely. That I've encountered that quite for sure, yes. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to tell a Norman story this evening.
Oh, well, that leads us into why you're here. The name of this segment is Ghost Stories with Sylvia. Now, you sent me an email that told me that you're going to tell us specifically about helpful or nice ghosts.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about spooky ghosts and ghosts that try to terrify people, but not all of them are like that. We'll see enough of that on TV because that's what gets ratings. But there are plenty of ghosts that are just enjoyable to be around because they are nice or helpful or friendly. The very first ghost story I ever heard, very first true ghost story that actually happened to somebody I know, went like this. I had a friend when I was in college and just afterwards named Dawn, and she had a wonderful personality, and she also had, one of her defining characteristics was that Dawn has always had long, beautiful, wavy auburn hair. And when she was a kid, she spent the night at a friend's house, and she was laying in bed trying to fall asleep. She became aware of a presence kind of standing over her, and she felt like it was a child. And all of a sudden, something reached out and petted her hair very gently and tucked a curl of this long, wavy auburn hair behind Dawn's ear.
Oh, my goodness. That's freaky.
Yeah. And this was the first story I'd ever heard that actually was a personal experience of somebody I knew. So that just blew my mind. And when I was in college, that was like, oh my gosh, I would have been so freaked out. Oh, that would have been terrible. But now, if I heard that story now, I would be like, oh, wow, that's so cool. So that's the difference. That's the difference decades of experience makes, I guess. Another story that I wanted to share with everybody that happened at the Panorama at the Peak restaurant in West Virginia. This restaurant has several ghosts, one of whom is a ghost they have named Captain Gray because he looks like a sea captain. He tends to stay in the pub area of the restaurant, which is the oldest part of the building. He appears as a solid, full figure. People think they're looking at an actual human being until he, disappears while they're looking at him. He's got a beard. He wears dark pants and a dark jacket, and he usually wears a flat cap that looks like a sea captain's cap. So they've named him Captain Gray. So we're not sure if this is the captain doing it, but there are several ghosts that like to play around in the kitchen of this restaurant, this Panorama at the Peak restaurant. They'll turn the burners on the stove off. The chef that works there has seen the dials move when there's nobody around the stove. And he'll say, will you knock that off? And the dial will stop moving. Is that the captain doing it? We're not sure. So the chef has never seen the captain in the kitchen, but whoever this is tends to be kind of playful, and he will respond if you tell him to stop doing something. He'll knock it off. Once this ghost made off with 2 pounds of meat. The chef had taken 2 bags of frozen turkey out of the freezer and put the bags of frozen meat in the walk-in to thaw. When he went back a couple minutes later to get the bags of meat, one of the bags was missing. And the chef is like, I know I took out 2 bags of meat. And he retraced the steps. He couldn't find this bag of meat that he swore he'd taken out of the freezer and put in the walk-in. And he was like, the ghost must have taken it. So he finally addressed the open air and he said, all right, whoever took this, make sure you keep it in the walk-in so it doesn't go bad. So in about an hour and a half later, the missing bag of turkey reappeared.
Oh, no, it did not.
In the walk-in.
It did
in the
not.
Walk-in.
Wow. 2 pounds. How does a ghost chew 2 pounds of meat?
I don't know.
I guess that's...
Apparitions have... If they want turkey badly enough, I guess they can do pretty much anything.
That's incredible. Okay. That's incredible.
Okay, so this next story comes from a very, very haunted place. It's the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. A historian that visited the asylum, she claims to have had a very unusual experience. She was taking a tour of the asylum with a friend, and they were walking down the long, dark hallways and peeking inside all the rooms that the patients used to live in. And all the while they were walking along, they were recording, this little voice recorder with them, they were recording their experiences. When this historian reached the room where there's a certain room in the asylum that legends say that there's a little girl named Lily who lived in the asylum and died in this particular room. So when the historian got there, she found a chair and she sat down and she decided to have a snack. So she pulled a box of crackers out of her bag and she set the bag and the crackers down on the floor and opened her notebook, and she was writing down some notes in her notebook. Then she stopped because she saw movement. The box of crackers was moving. Not only that, it was levitating.
Oh, no.
The box of crackers moved through the air a foot or two, and then it went back to where it had been and sat on the floor. And a moment later, this historian hears the sound of somebody crunching.
No. Wow.
Now later, after she returned home, she listened to the recording that she had made. After listening for a while, she retraced her steps down the hallway with her friend and poking into all the rooms and everything. She finally came to the portion of the recording that had taken place in Lily's room. So she's listening to the recording. She hears herself set down the bag, and she hears the noise from the box of crackers being taken out and opened. This is what she had done. Here's the noise of herself putting the crackers on the floor. And then she also heard the crunching sound that she thought she had imagined. And then she heard something else, something completely unexpected, and it sent shivers down her spine. It was a voice. It was a fragile, tiny voice, barely more than a whisper, but as soft as it was, she could clearly hear what the voice was saying. Someone or something in the room spoke the words, "Thank you for the snacks."
Oh, wow. Wow. And this is an actual listenable recording. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. You got me going now.
And now it's time for the Norman story.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess briefly, Norman is someone that you have met in the past.
Yeah. Norman is one of the spirits at the Peoria Players Theater. I have had several interactions with him. And as you mentioned earlier, yes, Norman has taken a shine to me. I will tell those stories at another time because that's a whole other episode in and of itself. But there was one time that I was at the theater helping out with a work day. Every once in a while, the theater management asks volunteers to come in, and we'll straighten the costume rooms, we'll dust in the corners in the makeup rooms and whatnot, just tidy up the place a bit. So I was working in the women's dressing room, and I noticed that some of the light bulbs above the makeup mirrors had burnt out. So I thought, that would be a nice thing for me to do, is replace these burnt out bulbs. So I had not been to a work day before, so I didn't know where all the supplies were kept. So I wandered upstairs to the hallway that's next to the stage, and there were several closed doors there. And I thought, well, I don't want to rummage through stuff where I'm not supposed to be. So I spoke up and I addressed Norman, and I said, "Hey, Norman, I'm looking for some light bulbs. I'm wondering if you could help me out."
You're sending chills down my spine.
I got the feeling that I should look in the middle door, open the middle door. So I opened the middle door and looked up, and right there on a shelf, right where I was looking, were several boxes of light bulbs.
Wow. Huh. You told me you weren't psychic.
I don't know if that was anything psychic or if it was Norman just doing me a solid.
That's incredible. And that happened to you.
That happened to me, yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That is truly amazing. And I'm going to be honest, I've never been on a ghost hunt or anything like that. In the 90s, I did go on a few Sasquatch hunts.
Okay.
I did do that, but I've never done a ghost hunt. But I don't think I could do a ghost hunt unless you were there to protect me. Or at least because it just seems like you have such a good time doing it.
Oh, I do. It's wonderful. It's the idea that we can communicate with someone who has gone before. It's very exciting to me. I'm planning a haunted road trip at the end of May. That's going to be very, very exciting. I'm going to go to the Sally House, it's supposed to be the most haunted house in the entire country. It's in Kansas. So that ought to be fun. And right half an hour away from there in St. Joseph, Missouri, is the Glory Psychiatric Museum. I'm going to stop in there and going to stop in at the Jesse James Homestead and just make a weekend out of it, a haunted weekend.
And I have to ask, what does your husband think of all this? I've never asked you that.
Oh, he doesn't believe in any of this at all. He is a complete dyed-in-the-wool skeptic. He absolutely does not believe in the afterlife or anything of the sort, and he pokes gentle fun at me for believing in this, but he doesn't poo-poo it. He says, go out, have fun, have your adventures, be safe, let me know when you're coming back. But no, he doesn't believe in any of this.
That's interesting. It reminds me of, there's a woman that is married to a full-blown psychic, and she's about as psychic as a potato. And so for them, some of the adventures that they have together it's just remarkable. I applaud you. I don't know how you do some of the things you do. It is just a joy to hear you talk about them.
Oh, thank you.
It's something I look forward to because you just tell things in a way that it doesn't seem so scary, even though you send chills down my spine.
Well, that's the excitement of it.
So, Sylvia, tell me what's going on with Lights Out, your podcast.
Oh, boy, fun stuff. I just spent part of today writing the script for the next Lights Out episode, which is about Archer Woods Cemetery, which is a haunted cemetery right outside Chicago. It's about 15 minutes away from the house I grew up in.
Wow.
And I was at a family reunion several months ago, and I decided, hey, I'm going to swing by this Archerwood Cemetery and check it out. And I found something very interesting there. I did not see any ghosts, but I found a mystery.
And so we'll have to tune in to the podcast to find out what that is?
Absolutely, yes. So that's going to be episode 68, Archerwood Cemetery, Lights Out Archerwood Cemetery.
And I will have all the links to that in the show notes for people that want to go find that.
Excellent.
And on the blog, do you have anything going on there that we should hear about?
The blog is hopping merrily along. Every Monday I have a Today I Learned weird fact of the day for the week, something to start people's weeks off. It was weird. There's something on WordPress where you can set it up in advance, and I accidentally put 2 strange facts on this past Monday's blog.
Uh-oh.
So
they got a twofer.
Yeah, so people got a double dose of weird. One was panda bears have the lining of their mouth and throat is actually kind of leathery so that they don't get splinters from eating the bamboo that they eat.
That makes sense. I never really thought about it, but bamboo isn't something you eat.
It's splintery, nasty stuff. And I could have gone quite happily to my grave not picturing that, but it does make sense.
Interesting.
And the other strange fact was, I believe it was something about, now this was not one of the facts, but in the Victorian period, there was a big business in making dentures out of human teeth. This was the fact that I put on the blog. Is that after the American Civil War, a lot of tooth merchants sent barrels and barrels of teeth over to England to be made into dentures that were taken from soldiers on the battlefield.
I often do a little bit on the show. I call it Johnny, Is It True? And I had that very same fact on there, is that they would extract the teeth right there on the battlefield. They'd go get the teeth from the dead, and that's what they did. And they would send them off to make dentures. And a lot of them went to the vets of the time that had, lost teeth or whatnot. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And to get a good set of teeth, you could do that with real human teeth that had been in battle. From a ghost hunting point of view, wow.
There was a corollary to that I found out later, and I did not add this to the fact, but I just learned about it and thought it was bizarre. It was a very common wedding present in Victorian times for brides to have their teeth pulled and get a set of dentures as a wedding present.
Oh, no, that's weird.
That is weird. But yeah, I read about some lady's grandmother, or I don't know who it was, some person's grandmother told their descendant about, I got a cavity and you could see it from the front, and we didn't really have money for me to keep going to the dentist or whatever. So that was my wedding present, is that I got all my teeth pulled and I got a set of dentures of human teeth. And she was in her mid-20s when that happened. These women were they're gonna be in charge of a household, and they were gonna have babies, and they were gonna be busy raising children, and they didn't really have time to go to the dentist. So that was the wedding present. Have all your teeth yanked and get a set of dentures.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sylvia, I think we've reached the end of our segment here, and I want to thank you yet again for the stories.
Absolutely.
And I want to thank Norman for taking care of you.
Definitely.
And we'll see you next time on Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
Okay. I will see you next time, and I look forward to it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I always have a great time talking with Sylvia, and I learn all kinds of new stuff. If you want to visit her on her own turf, head to sylviashults.wordpress.com. There you will find her blog and access to the podcast Lights Out. I'll also have links in the show notes. Thank you, Sylvia. Our main story comes with a story. I have always wanted to read one of those classic science fiction tales from the 50s. Today is the day that I do that. I did a little research looking for the perfect story to experiment on. What you're about to hear is my first attempt at a dramatic reading. Please send in your feedback, but remember to be kind. This story was written by Jack Douglas. More about him later. It is a what-if tale that looks at space exploration and the pitfalls they could potentially unleash. It comes from the Amazing Stories magazine, April of 1955 edition. It is titled Test Rocket and received high honors from the writers of that time. Hope you enjoy it. It's amazing how much you can learn about absolute strangers if you just stop to think about the kind of animal they'll put into a test rocket. Captain Beard stood at the window of the laboratory where the 1,000 parts of a strange rocket lay strewn in careful order. Small groups worked slowly over the dismantled parts. The captain wanted to ask, but something stopped him. Behind him, Dr. Johansson sat at his desk, his gnarled old hand tight about a whiskey bottle. The bottle the doctor had always kept but never brought out except when he was alone. He waited for Captain Beard to ask his question. Captain Beard turned at last. "There are markings?" he asked. It was not a question. Captain Beard knew the markings of the rocket testing station as well as the doctor did. "Yes," the doctor said. There are markings, identical, but not our paint. Captain Bird turned back to the window. 6 months ago it happened. 10 minutes after launching, the giant test rocket had only been a speck on the observation screen. Captain Beard had turned away in disgust. "A mouse," the captain had said. "Unfortunate. A mouse can't observe, build, report. My men are getting restless, Johansen." "When we're ready, Captain," the doctor had said. It was 12 hours before the urgent call from Central Control brought the captain running back to the laboratory. The doctor was there before him. Professor Shults wasted no time. He pointed to the instrument panel. "Sudden shift. See for yourself. We'll miss Mars by 1.25 million, at least." 2 hours later, the shift in course of the test rocket was apparent to all of them, and so was their disappointment. "According to the instruments, the steering shifted 1/4 inch. No reason shows up," Professor Shults said. "Flaw in the metal?" Dr. Johansen said. "How far will it go?" Captain Bird asked. Professor Shults shrugged. "Until the fuel runs out, which is probably as good as never, or the landing mechanism is activated by a planet-sized body." "Of course. Did you plot it?" the doctor asked. "Of course I did," Professor Shults said. "As close as I can calculate it, it's headed for Alpha Centauri." Captain Beard turned away. The doctor watched him. "Perhaps, Captain, you'll not be so hasty with your men's lives in the future," the doctor said. Professor Shults sat, spinning dials. "No contact," the professor said. "No contact at all." That had been 6 months ago. 3 more test rockets had been fired successfully before the urgent report came through from Alaskan Observation Post number 4. A rocket was coming across the pole. The strange rocket was tracked and escorted by fighter jets all the way to the rocket testing station, where it cut its own motors and gently landed in the center of a division of atomic-armed infantry. The captain, the doctor, and everyone else waited impatiently. "You sure it's not ours?" Captain Beard asked. The doctor laughed. "Identical, yes, but 3 times the size of ours. Perhaps one of the Asian ones." "No, it's our design, but too large. Much too large." Professor Shults put their thoughts into words. "Looks like someone copied ours. Someone, somewhere. It's hard to imagine, but true, nevertheless." They waited 2 weeks. Nothing happened. Then a radiation shield team went in to examine the rocket. 2 more weeks, and the strange rocket was dismantled and spread over the field of the testing station. The rocket was dismantled, and the station had begun to talk to itself in whispers, and looked at the sky. Captain Beard now stood at the window and looked out at the dismantled rocket. He looked, but his mind was not on the parts of the rocket he could see from the window. "The materials, they're not ours?" the captain asked. "Unknown here," the doctor said. The captain nodded. "Those were our instruments." "Yes." The doctor still held the whiskey bottle in a tight grasp. "They sent them back?" the captain asked. The doctor crashed the bottle hard against the desktop. "Ask it, Captain. For God's sake, ask it." The captain turned to face the doctor directly. "It was a man, a full-grown man." The doctor sighed as if letting the pent-up steam of his heart escape. "Yes, it's a man. It breathes. It eats. It has all the attributes of a man, but it's not of our planet." "It's speech," the captain began. "That isn't speech, Captain. It's only sound." The doctor stopped. He examined the label of his bottle of whiskey very carefully. A good brand of whiskey. He seems quite happy in the storeroom, you know, Captain, which puzzled me at first. He can't read anything, not even the instruments in that ship. In fact, he shows no interest in this rocket at all. The captain sat down now. He sat at the desk and faced the doctor. At least they had the courage to send a man, Doctor, not a mouse. A man. The doctor stared at the captain, his hands squeezing and unsqueezing the bottle again. A man who can't read his own instruments, the doctor laughed. Perhaps you've failed to see the point. Like that stupid general who sits out there waiting for men from somewhere. Don't you think it's a possibility? The doctor nodded. A very good possibility, Captain, but they'll not be men. The doctor seemed to pause and lean forward. That rocket, Captain, is a test rocket. A test rocket just like ours. Then the doctor picked up his whiskey and at last poured 2 glasses. Perhaps a drink, Captain? The captain took the whiskey, but was watching the sky outside the window. That was fun for me to read, and I hope it was tolerable for you to hear. I love the subtleness of that story. It does not come right out and say that the alien's form of a mouse is humankind. A very plausible idea when you think about it. We may not be the top of the food chain, after all. Perhaps we're more akin to smart lab rats. The story was written by Jack Douglas. He was an American comedy writer who wrote for radio and television. He wrote for such greats as Red Skelton, Bob Hope, Jimmy Durante, Bing Crosby, Woody Allen, Ozzie and Harriet, Jack Parr, and believe it or not, Laugh-In. He also appeared on television with Merv Griffin and Jack Parr. By 1959, his celebrity status enabled him to mass market a book called My Brother Was an Only Child, which became an instant bestseller. He won an Emmy in 1954 for Best Written Comedy Material. How about that? Now, do you remember that I would love to hear what you thought of my reading? All forms of critique will be accepted. Thank you for listening. That is the end of this podcast. I want to thank Kevin Starr, Brian, Catherine Michaels, and Sylvia Shults for taking part in the show today. You guys make doing this so much more fun. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, just head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you're going to find every possible link you'll need. We're on Twitter, Facebook, iTunes, TuneIn, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and many, many other services. Do pick one, and please leave reviews and feedback about the show. It really does help us to grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.